By Alice Phillips, travel blogger. Morning, the fragrant magic of the Spice Bazaar. The moment I stepped into the Egyptian bazaar, more famously known as the Spice Bazaar, I felt like I'd been pulled into a living, breathing painting. The air was a heady mix of saffron, cumin, dried roses, and sweet Turkish delights. Colorful mounds of spices looked like tiny mountains of gold and fire. The vendors smiled knowingly as if they could already tell I was a sucker for anything aromatic. I couldn't resist picking up a little bag of apple tea and a tiny jar of pomegranate molasses. Two things I'd never tried before. The bazaar buzzed with life. Locals bargaining in Turkish, tourists gasping in delight. It was symphonic. My camera worked overtime. But there are things even a lens can't quite capture, like the warmth of the vendors or the sheer sensory overload of thousands of scents blending into one unforgettable morning moment. Bosphorus cruise. Sailing between two worlds, boarding the public boat felt almost symbolic. This wasn't just a cruise. It was a crossing. Europe to Asia, Asia to Europe, over the Bosphorus, that magical strait where cultures, empires, and cuisines collide. We drifted past the Dolmabahçe Palace, its white marble facade glowing under the soft Istanbul sun. I imagined Ottoman sultans pacing its ornate halls. A bit further along, the Çırağan Palace shimmered like something out of a fairy tale, now a luxury hotel. And then came Rumeli Fortress, imposing, ancient, and dramatic. It's wild to think how this spot once defended the gateway to Constantinople. The breeze carried the salty tang of the sea and the calls of seagulls. I leaned against the railing, heart wide open, soaking up the collision of grandeur and simplicity, east and west. Fener and Balat, colors, cobblestones, and coffee. Back on land, we wove through the cobblestone streets of Fener and Balat, two neighborhoods that felt like Istanbul's bohemian soul. Pastel-colored houses tilted ever so slightly, laundry flapping from balconies, cats sunning themselves like they ruled the world. I sipped a thick Turkish coffee at a tiny cafe where the walls were covered in vintage movie posters and hand-painted tiles. I recognized a few spots from Turkish dramas I'd watched on Netflix. How surreal to actually stand there! It was like walking through a set, except it was all real. Fener and Balat didn't try to impress, they just were, and that made them unforgettable. Cast iron faith. St. Stephen and the Orthodox Patriarchate. The Bulgarian St. Stephen Church left me speechless. Cast iron. Yes, entirely made of cast iron. Its neo-Gothic facade gleamed in the light, and as I stepped inside, a soft, almost sacred stillness wrapped around me. The scent of candle wax and centuries of whispered prayers lingered in the air. Nearby, we visited the Church of the Orthodox Patriarchate. It was more modest, but deeply revered. I could feel the weight of history, of faith enduring through empires and upheaval. Sunset at Pierre Loti Café, a golden horn goodbye. Our last stop was the iconic Pierre Loti Café, perched above the golden horn. As I sipped tea from a tulip-shaped glass, the view below took my breath away. The water shimmered, The minarets glowed gold in the setting sun, and Istanbul stretched out like a dream. I thought of the French writer Pierre Loti, who once wrote here, and completely understood why he never wanted to leave. Summary of the day. I began the day in a spice-scented market and ended it watching the sun kiss the city goodnight from a legendary hilltop cafe. Between two continents and countless memories, Istanbul showed me it doesn't sit still, it dances.